So given that, in my opinion, they came off of arguably the best episode that the anime has seen to date. It was so raw, it was so real, and it just hits you on that realistic level, tied together with already a beautiful story that they've been telling. To have an episode like this come in and just see both characters that we've been rooting for succeed in two very different ways, but both feel like they earn that victory. As much as even on Kabe's side, his rival, I thought he had an amazing flow, and honestly, at points I was rooting for him. Even though it was such a brief competition, I really enjoyed what he had to offer, and seriously, when he grabbed his hand and said he's the victor, that took some balls, man. They didn't even leave that up to the crowd. He just said, "You're good. I'm just glad you're back to the stage," sort of a thing. And then when it came to our girl Eiko, it's one of those things where I found in music anime, when they're building up that big moment, that big song that's supposed to make the anime characters and the viewers say, "Holy shit, I've never seen it or heard anything like that," it doesn't always hit. It doesn't always feel like it's as magical, for me anyway, as what they're saying. But I have to give props. Even though I thought they were about to blue balls us with the shattering glass effect that they did to our boy Kongming, the fact that they did end up teasing a bit of the song. It wasn't like we heard the full thing, but the fact of the matter is, there was something so polished about it, where they had that level of professionalism, where you could tell it was mixed and mastered by a pro, probably one of the best in the industry. But the fact of the matter is, it didn't come across as forced. It didn't feel like a label making a song to be a hit on the radio. It's one of those songs that naturally will become a hit because it actually feels genuine and sticks out from the generic stuff you'll see time and time again on the radio or YouTube, wherever it may be. And I think the fact that even though walking into this episode, I had a feeling this would more or less happen, that we'd see both sides more or less succeed, I'm just glad the fact that the way they succeeded didn't feel like it was just because they're the main characters. Kabe fell harder than most in his shoes would in a story like this, and Eiko herself very well could have missed that deadline, given the fact that she really has been moments away from quitting more than once. And I'm glad the fact that this story said, we're not going to make them succeed because, well, how do you have the show continue if they don't? It's more so, we're seeing the rise and fall of characters left and right, and we could have easily seen a different outcome where one, maybe both of them, didn't succeed, but that wasn't the end of their journey, because they've learned and grew so much. Just imagine Kabe as an example. Had he not won on that stage, you could have wrote it in a way that he was the one grabbing the arm and saying he's the victor, and still had him have his own confidence, because it's not like he was competing to win. He was competing to have fun, and he was having fun the entire time. And when it comes to Eiko, I think in terms of him mixing her song, that had to happen no matter what. But in terms of her making it to the big stage, that doesn't have to happen. We still don't know if it will happen or not. Given the crowd's response to the song, it does seem like they like it quite a bit. But I'm glad anyway that this show isn't afraid to say, just because certain things usually happen in a show like this doesn't mean they're always going to happen in this show. Because this show is pretty realistic, even though it has the Three Kingdoms kind of twist of a man from the past being thrown into a modern age. It's not like his line of thinking in terms of how he makes things a reality happens because it's anime and, of course it's going to happen. I love the fact that even having basically no knowledge on the Three Kingdoms, I can still thoroughly enjoy the references they make or the idea of how he explains how he got to a certain line of thinking. And I see so many people over different videos that I've covered the show for say, as a big fan of the Three Kingdoms, or a big fan of this character that I've never heard of until this anime, I love seeing people dissect and how they're like, it's so historically accurate and arguably one of the most historically accurate shows involving the Three Kingdoms, despite it being, on paper such an insane idea of throwing him into a modern age and almost being a music kind of connoisseur sort of a thing. But it's great to see the show really take off, and it's one of those shows that it feels like it does get better as it progresses over. Not to say every episode surpasses the best episode, I think last week was the best episode of the anime to date. And I wouldn't say this episode's better than last week, but it's one of those things where it feels like it has a steady climb, where it's we're going to tell you by the time you finish that last episode that this is going to be a show that you're still going to want to recommend to more and more people because it's just that damn good. And it's going to be something that it's hard not to, tweet out to PA Works or buy the Blu-ray because you want to see more of it. Because it's one of those things where I couldn't even jump into the source material if I wanted to, because a big thing with music anime is the sound. the sound is what makes it such a compelling adventure. And sure, you could read the manga, read a light novel, you could do this or that with an OST playing, but it's still not the exact same. And while I do think, source readers definitely, they tend to always prefer their source over the anime, for me, it's one of those things where, especially when it comes to music, it's impossible for me to carry on. So I'm hoping that, I still think they're going to stop at a satisfying point. I think, given the arc that they've been building up, it should end in a good way. I'm just hoping at the very least this is going to, leave it open for more in a solid way, while tying up this big event in a great way. Because, when it comes to Nanami, she's very much biting her tongue, holding her breath, and going with the flow because she doesn't want to go back to selling no concert tickets. And given this man and the way he goes about his business, it very much seems like he would get them to that stage. But it almost feels like Nanami is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. One, her friend, she believes is a true passionate singer and deserves that stage, but on the other hand, she has her own bills to pay. She has her own dreams, and she's holding on to the hope that probably someday she'll get to be real again. So it's an interesting conundrum, but overall this episode makes it feel like the victories are warranted rather than just being like, oh, characters are winning because they're the main characters, or characters are losing because they're not the main characters and they're not a part of the main side cast. This show's like, no, we're going to tell something realistic, and like I said, Koumei could have easily lost on that stage. In fact, I was predicting he would, but he would still have his confidence, so the way they kind of came out on top, at the very least for now anyway, feels warranted, and I'm glad it's not just magically resolving things because, we have to, because authors can't write anything original these days. No, this author clearly could. It's really hard to say if I want to see anything that they haven't shown us already, because, they started to tease us in this episode with him, almost having this out-of-body experience. Honestly, at first, I thought maybe he was transported back in time. I wasn't, because we don't really know how he got there to begin with, so we don't know if there would be any more weird shenanigans taking place. But it's nice to see that he had this moment, and I'm sure the historical junkies are going to love it a lot more than I did. But even as it stood, not being super into the Three Kingdoms, or not being super into, I guess I could say, the more historical aspects about this show, you got a sense of what it meant to him all at the same time. And honestly, I can't remember the last time I saw a show quite like this one, where it's like, hey, we're gonna have something based around a time period that many people might not give a shit about, and those who do are gonna be very bird's eye view, making sure you don't mess it up or you keep characters in line, and have both sides feel equally enjoyed. Honestly, because I continue to see people who love the Three Kingdoms, or are like me, don't really care too much about it, and we all seemingly love the show the exact same way and don't feel like one aspect about it is overstepping its boundaries or anything like that. I don't know how the show does it. I don't know how the show snuck under the radar for so long that it took some of us episodes to realize we should even watch it, but this show deserves another season. It deserves more views. It deserves everything and more, because it's easily one of this season's best. But thoughts if you have any down below. What did you think of this insane episode? What do you hope to see maybe with the last couple? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.